Welcome back to Migration Weekly. I'm your host here in InfoExpress, and this week has been absolutely explosive for anyone planning to work, study, or live between the United States and Canada. I'm talking about changes that could completely reshape your immigration timeline. Picture this. Amazon just increased their foreign worker hiring by nearly 800 positions in a single year. Meanwhile, Canada is cutting immigration targets by tens of thousands of spots. And here's the kicker. A brand new survey shows that 75% of Canadians now want fewer immigrants. That's a complete reversal from just a few years ago. But that's not all. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security just dropped a proposal that could end a visa benefit that international students have relied on for decades. We're talking about the duration of status system that gives you flexibility in your stay. Whether you're clutching an H-1B petition, planning your study abroad journey, dreaming of Canadian permanent residency, or you're an employer trying to understand the new landscape, the next 15 minutes aren't just informative, they could literally save you thousands of dollars and months of legal headaches. I've spent the last 48 hours analyzing policy documents, immigration data, and survey results from both sides of the border. What I found will surprise you. Let's break it down. Let's start with what's happening in the United States, because the story here is much more complex than the headlines suggest. Yes, we're seeing a massive surge in H-1B approvals, but when you dig into the data, there are some fascinating patterns emerging. Amazon didn't just hire a few more foreign workers, they went from 9,257 H-1B approvals in 2024 to 10,044 in 2025. That's a jump of 787 positions, representing about an 8.5% increase year over year. But here's what's really interesting. This isn't just Amazon, we're seeing similar patterns across multiple sectors. In the technology sector, companies like Google, Microsoft, and Meta have all increased their H-1B utilization. But it's not just tech. Financial services firms on Wall Street are bringing in more quantitative analysts and risk management specialists from overseas. Consulting giants like McKinsey, Deloitte, and PwC are expanding their international talent pools. And let's talk about what this means financially. The average H-1B salary across these major employers has increased to approximately $95,000 to $130,000, depending on the role and location. That's up from previous years, indicating these aren't just any jobs. These are high-value positions that American companies desperately need to fill. But here's the contradiction that's fascinating me. While employers are doubling down on foreign talent, the Department of Homeland Security is simultaneously proposing to make it harder for international students to transition into the workforce. The proposed end to duration of status for F1, J1, and I1 visa holders represents a fundamental shift in how America treats international students and exchange visitors. Let me explain what this actually means for you. Okay, let's get technical for a moment because this change could affect hundreds of thousands of people. Right now, if you're an F1 student, your I-94 says DS duration of status. This means you can stay as long as you're maintaining your student status, plus your grace periods. Under the current system, you get flexibility. You can extend your program, change schools, apply for optional practical training, and transition to other visa categories without worrying about a hard deadline on your I-94. The proposed system would give you a fixed end date, typically up to 4 years for most programs. Sounds reasonable, right? Wrong. Here's why this is a big deal. First, if you need to extend your studies, maybe your research takes longer, or you decide to pursue a higher degree, you'd need to apply for an extension before your fixed date expires. Miss that deadline by even 1 day, and you're unlawfully present. Second, the practical impact on optional practical training could be huge. Right now, the transition from student status to OPT is relatively seamless. With fixed dates, the timing becomes critical, and any delays in processing could leave you in limbo. And let's be realistic about USCIS processing times. We're seeing delays of 8 to 12 months for various applications. Imagine being stuck in that uncertainty with a hard deadline approaching. Third, and this is crucial for employers, the predictability of when a student can start work becomes much more complex. This could actually discourage companies from hiring international students, creating a paradox where H-1B demand increases but the pipeline of eligible candidates shrinks. Recent surveys indicate that 60% of employers already find the current student-to-work visa process confusing. Adding more complexity isn't going to help. Now let's cross the northern border where Canada is experiencing what I can only describe as an immigration identity crisis. The numbers everyone's reporting tell part of the story, but there's so much more happening beneath the surface. Canada's new immigration targets, 395,000 for 2025, 380,000 for 2026, and 365,000 for 2027, represent the first sustained reduction in permanent resident targets in over a decade. But to understand why this matters, you need to understand Canada's immigration strategy since 2015. Under Justin Trudeau's government, Canada increased immigration targets almost every year. In 2015, they aimed for 260,000 new permanent residents. By 2023, that target had grown to 465,000. That's nearly an 80% increase in less than a decade. This aggressive expansion was driven by demographic reality. Canada has an aging population and chronically low birth rates. Without immigration, Canada's workforce would shrink dramatically by 2030. But here's where it gets complicated. The first half of 2025 saw 207,650 permanent resident admissions, compared to 255,950 in the same period in 2024. That's a 19% decrease. But, and this is important, Canada is still on track to meet their revised targets. What's really interesting is the provincial variation. Ontario and British Columbia, traditionally the biggest destinations, are seeing even steeper declines. Meanwhile, Atlantic provinces, through their immigration programs, are actually meeting or exceeding their proportional targets. The driving force behind these reductions isn't just public opinion, though that matters, it's infrastructure capacity. Housing costs in Toronto and Vancouver have reached crisis levels, partly attributed to rapid population growth. Healthcare systems in major cities are strained, public transit is overwhelmed. Which brings us to that shocking Nanos Research poll. 75% of Canadians supporting reduced immigration isn't just a number, it represents a fundamental shift in Canadian attitudes toward multiculturalism and growth. Let's dig deeper into this poll, because it reveals something profound about Canadian society right now. This isn't just about immigration numbers, it's about Canadian identity. Historically, Canada has been one of the most pro-immigration countries in the developed world. Polls from 2018 and 2019 showed 70 to 80% of Canadians supporting current or increased immigration levels. Fast forward to 2025, and we've seen a complete reversal. The breakdown is fascinating. Support for reduced immigration is highest among Canadians aged 35 to 54 at 82%, followed by those over 55 at 79%. Younger Canadians aged 18 to 34 are split, with 51% supporting reductions and 49% wanting to maintain or increase current levels. Geographically, the strongest support for reduced immigration comes from Alberta at 84% and Saskatchewan at 81%. While Quebec shows 73% support, and Ontario sits at 76%. Even traditionally multicultural British Columbia shows 71% support for reductions. So, what's driving this shift? Three factors emerge from the data: housing affordability, healthcare wait times, and job competition concerns. In cities where housing costs have increased most dramatically, support for reduced immigration is strongest. The Liberal government's response has been swift. Immigration Minister Mark Miller has acknowledged these concerns and indicated that the reduced targets are partly a response to public sentiment. This represents a significant political shift for a party that has built much of its brand on pro-immigration policies. So what does all this mean if you're a professional trying to navigate between these two countries? The landscape is shifting rapidly, and honestly, timing has never been more critical. For US professionals looking at Canada, the traditional advantages are still there, but, the windows are narrowing. The trade NAFTA, or TN visa category continues to function smoothly between the countries, with approval rates remaining high at around 96% for qualified applicants. Now, if we look at Canada's express entry system, while it's processing fewer applications overall, it's actually becoming more efficient for high-skilled workers. The most recent draws have favored candidates with Canadian work experience, advanced degrees, and French language skills. So, if you're a US professional with these qualifications, your chances are actually better now than they were 2 years ago. Processing times for federal skilled worker applications have stabilized at around 6 months compared to 12 to 18 months during the pandemic years. Provincial nominee programs are processing applications in 3 to 4 months for most categories. One interesting development is Canada's expanded criminal rehabilitation pathways. This affects many U.S. professionals who might have minor criminal records, things like DUI convictions or misdemeanor drug charges from college. Canada is streamlining these processes, recognizing that excluding otherwise qualified professionals doesn't serve their economic interests. For spousal sponsorship, which affects many cross-border relationships, Canada has reduced processing times to an average of 12 months, down from 18 to 24 months in previous years. However, the error rate in applications remains high at about 35%, mostly due to incomplete documentation or misunderstanding of requirements. Now, for Canadians or international workers in Canada eyeing the United States, the H-1B surge we discussed creates real opportunities, but the strategy needs to be different. With the proposed changes to student visas, the traditional path of studying in the US first becomes riskier. Instead, we're seeing more success with direct H-1B applications for experienced professionals, L1 intra-company transfers for those working with multinational companies, and O1 visas for those with specialized skills or achievements. The key insight here is that both countries still need skilled workers, but they're becoming more selective about how those workers enter their systems. Alright, if this deep dive analysis helped you understand what's really happening with US-Canada migration, and I mean really understand it, not just the surface level headlines, I need you to do several things right now, and they're all crucial for staying ahead of these changes. First, smash that like button. Seriously, immigration analysis like this takes days to research and hours to present accurately. When you like this video, it tells YouTube that detailed, factual immigration content matters, and it helps us reach more people who desperately need this information. We're competing against clickbait channels that give you headlines without context. Second, subscribe and ring that notification bell. But here's the key, turn on all notifications. Immigration policy doesn't wait for your convenience. Laws change on Fridays at 5 p.m. Policies get announced during holidays. Processing times shift without warning. We're literally the only channel that will notify you within hours when something affects your immigration status or plans. Third, join our community tab discussions. After every video, we post additional resources, answer follow-up questions, and share breaking news that happens between our weekly uploads. This week alone, we've shared 3 policy updates that didn't make it into this video but could affect your timeline. Fourth, comment below with your specific situation. Are you an F1 student worried about the duration of status changes? Are you a Canadian professional timing your move to the US? Are you an employer trying to understand these new patterns? Your questions directly influence our content calendar, and I personally read and respond to comments during my research phase. Fifth, we've created an entire ecosystem of content around these topics. If you're specifically interested in H-1B strategies and salary negotiation, that video is up there. If you want to understand Canada's express entry system changes in detail, click that video. If you're concerned about the student visa changes, we have a comprehensive breakdown right there. And here's something special. We've organized all our content into playlists by immigration category and timeline. Whether you're planning 6 months ahead or need to act within 30 days, we have curated sequences that will get you from confusion to clarity to action. Let's wrap this up with the 3 key takeaways that should guide your decisions right now. First, the US remains hungry for skilled foreign workers, but the pathways are becoming more rigid and timing dependent. If you're planning to study in the US as a pathway to employment, you need backup plans and precise timing. If you're already qualified for H-1B positions, this is actually a favorable moment. Second, Canada is still welcoming skilled immigrants, but at a more selective pace. The public opinion shift is real and will likely influence policy for the next 2 to 3 years. However, if you qualify for express entry with high scores, your chances are better now than they've been in years, because there's less competition. Third, both countries are prioritizing economic needs while managing public sentiment. This creates opportunities for those who understand the system and challenges for those who don't stay informed. Next week, we're diving deep into something that affects thousands of green card applicants: the new USCIS guidance on good moral character determinations. We've obtained internal training materials that show exactly what officers are looking for, what automatically triggers additional review, and how to present your case for the best outcome. We're also getting exclusive insights from immigration attorneys on both sides of the border about strategies that are working right now in this changing environment. Plus, we'll analyze the economic data behind these policy shifts, because understanding the why helps you predict the what's next. And I'm excited to announce that starting next month, we're launching a special monthly series called Policy Deep Dives, where we'll spend 20 to 30 minutes dissecting single policy changes, complete with document analysis, legal expert interviews, and real case studies. Look, I know immigration can feel overwhelming, especially when policies change faster than you can adapt your plans. But here's what I've learned from covering this beat for so many years. Information isn't just power in immigration, it's hope. It's the difference between feeling helpless and taking control of your future. Every week, we're going to be here, cutting through the noise, analyzing the data, and giving you the insights you need to make informed decisions about your life and career. Here in Info Express, this has been your weekly deep dive into US-Canada migration policy. And remember, in immigration, the details determine your destiny. See you next week with more analysis you won't find anywhere else. Stay informed, stay strategic, and stay ahead of the curve.